BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome to Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals, part of the Bleav Network, joined by NFL veteran and Super Bowl 33 participant on the Atlanta Falcons, Ed Smith. I am Javon Adams. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and follow this podcast and tell all your Cardinal fans, friends to do the same. You can also watch us on Bleav TV around the country, in airports, and on YouTube. Read the Bleav stories at si.com and follow us across all our Bleav socials. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. What is good, my brother?
The NFL has continued to do it, man, taking over real estate across the board. We got the schedule release, and how everybody is so excited today to know when their teams are playing. We've known who they've been playing for a long time. Now the excitement is everybody can finally go out and get those tickets for those specific games.
Yeah, and you're one of those, you're in that wheelhouse, or you're in that, I guess, in that demographic or in that group, because your brother's son, which is your nephew, plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And so you're trying to figure out what that looks like with you and your youngest son going out there to do that. And so that's one of the things that you're looking at that calendar too, right?
Yeah, and obviously he's got his other favorite teams out there and stuff. So, it's an opportunity to start looking at the calendar and figuring out, which ones you might go up and see. And obviously with the Chiefs, they open up the season, being Super Bowl defending champions, they open up the year against Baltimore that first Thursday. So that's an option. We're thinking about that one, and obviously some other games throughout the year for them as well.
All right, so let's get back to the subject at hand. The NFL released the schedule, so it's a big schedule release, as Ed alluded to, and so let's get into the Arizona Cardinals. So of course we're going to get into just the week by week, where the bye is, and then also, of course, the never, for the most part, from my point of view, from my side of things anyway, accurate what we project just on looking at it right now, as looking at the schedule, the ebbs and flows, what the projected win and loss total may be. So let's get into it first. So the Cardinals, they start off the season at going at Buffalo. Then the week 2, they're at home against the Los Angeles Rams. Then they also have the Detroit Lions in, and they have the Washington Commanders come in week 4. So that's 3 home games in a row. So that's a good thing there, I guess. And I want to get your thoughts on kind of where some of these runs are, so to speak. Then they're on the road for a couple of games. They go to San Francisco, and then in week 6, they head to Green Bay to take on the Green Bay Packers. And then what's interesting is week 7, they are they're going to be they're going to be taking on the Chargers for Monday Night Football, but it's only going to be on ESPN Plus. So kind of on Monday Night Football, if you want to say so. But I mean, I get they playing on Monday, so the body clock is the body clock. Then week 8, they go to Miami to take on the Miami Dolphins, and then they're on the road for a couple more games. So for weeks 9 and 10, they go to Chicago to take on the Bears. Oh, I'm sorry, they're at home. I should say they're at home. They're taking on the Chicago Bears and the New York Jets, and then they have their bye in week 11, which is better than I Bleav it's been the last couple of seasons. And then they're going to be on the road after that bye for 2 weeks, going to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, at the Minnesota Vikings in week 13. Then they have 2 home games in a row. They're going to be welcoming the Seattle Seahawks in week 14, New England Patriots in week 15, and then they have 2 of their last 3 are on the road. They're going to take on the Carolina Panthers in week 16, and then in week 17 they're going to be taking on going to Los Angeles to take on the Rams, and they'll end the season going to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. Anything jump out? Nothing seems too egregious in terms of being on the road versus being at home for a long time. But in the beginning of the season, looks like they should to try to win some of their fan base back, or excite the fan base. They at least have the opportunity in the first 4 weeks to have 3 out of the first 4 at home.
Something that sticks out to me is 5 out of their first 6 games, Jay,
Hmm.
are playoff teams from last year.
Yeah.
You got,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a stretch where you go to Buffalo, then you got a nice home stand, which is odd. You usually don't get 3 games in a row at home,
Hmm.
but you got Rams, the playoff team, Detroit went to the conference championship last year. You get a break with Washington, but then you got San Fran, who was a Super Bowl contender,
Hmm.
Green Bay, which was a playoff team as well. So
Hmm.
5 out of your first 6 weeks. And I was wondering this too, because you look at the over under for the Cardinals. I have it at 6.5. And
Yeah.
that's the bottom of our division. You got San Fran, I think they're 11.5. The Rams are projected 8.5 over under. You got Seattle 7.5. Then you got us bringing in the rear at 6.5. And I
Hmm.
thought that was kind of a low total considering we're getting our quarterback back. But then, like I said, you look at the beginning, the front load of that schedule,
Yeah.
and wow, that's a tough run right
It
out of the
is.
box. And it could be a situation where we actually have a very good team that's improving, but
Yeah.
because of the schedule right out of the box, we could be in a hole, 2-4, heaven forbid 1-5, something like that. So
Yeah.
that's what stuck out to me from the very beginning. Is that's a very, and especially for a last place team, this,
Hmm.
we were a last place schedule where we fell last year, and just to come out the box with that heavy of a schedule, man, that sticks out to me like a sore thumb for the most part. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Especially when I was looking at just trying to think of where the wins and losses are going to fall. I actually have after 3 games, 0-3, just because looking at it that way. Because Buffalo, even though there's been a lot of change and turnover in Buffalo, but you still have that man at quarterback, right? And
Yeah,
then Los Angeles Rams, we know how historically the Rams have owned the Arizona Cardinals. Detroit, Goff is a good quarterback. I mean, he just got
yeah.
the bag, and they're, as you mentioned, they were a playoff team last season, and then so that's the first 3 games, and I think that first win might come against Washington, just because you're going up against a rookie quarterback in what I believe Jaden Daniels, and then you have Cliff Kingsbury that's coming in, and I mean, who knows? He might be motivated.
Yeah.
Well, he could be motivated as he wants, but it all depends upon the talent and the execution of the game plan. So, yeah, those first 3 games, I have them coming out 0-3, and if that is the case, then it becomes, because everybody needs to look at this. And when I say everybody needs to look at it, the GM, the head coach is going to say, well, we can win no matter what. So, but if he's being honest with himself, then he might say this is going to be a tough stretch here, and the GM and the owner have to look at it from a fresh perspective as well, because you don't want to hit the panic button by looking at this schedule. You will probably say 0-3 too, and that's where that I think after the week 3 is done, that's going to be some interesting conversation if they are indeed 0-3 at that point.
And the other thing we have to take into account too, Jay, is this is still like, I'm not going to say we're necessarily in total rebuild mode, but this is a team that they stripped it down to the bare minimum as far as talent level on the roster. It is somewhat of a reboot, if you want to even call it that.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you know, our philosophy here with the Easy Sports Talk Show, it's not necessarily going to be the W's and the L's. It's going to be how they look in those W's and L's. Say if they
Hmm.
come out here and after 3 weeks, Jay, if they are 0-3, there are all kind of different versions of 0-3. If they come out here and wet the bed and just look atrocious, you can almost say same old Cardinals. If they
Yeah.
come out here and in those first 3 games are battling, going down to the final whistle, could have gone either way, but we're 0-3. That's a very positive 0-3. So that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye on from the very beginning. It's not necessarily going
Right.
to be the record, because once again, I don't think this is now 6.5 points or wins over under. I think that's a little low. I do think the Cardinals could get to 8, maybe 9, that type of thing. And
Now you know me, I'm a dude that likes to be a little more optimistic than you. When I
yeah,
was looking at this, yeah, I got 7, and I don't think I think, and I was, and that's a little bit trying to look at and that was trying to predict
your
the
glass is a little
psychology of the
fuller.
team. Yeah, because one of the wins that I have is San Francisco, but that's the end of the season when you would think that everything would be kind of wrapped up, so to speak. And I have them the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. And that's where I have 5 of their wins coming. 5 of the last
in
6, and
in
that's a little
tabulating,
crazy.
you know how we always do it here, Jay. They're going to lose a game they're supposed to win.
Right.
They're going to win a couple games that you're supposed to lose. That's just how it always goes. Like
Yeah.
last year, who would have thought we would beat the Cowboys? We were,
Right.
you're looking at some of those head scratchers. There's going to be a head scratcher on both sides as far as a W and an L somewhere in there. I'm leaning toward they might surprise us a little bit, especially because you're getting your franchise quarterback back under center.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we mean that literally and
Right. Right.
figuratively.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And he's got a whole off season work, and so hopefully there's improvement there. I do, like I said, for some reason, I don't know, that 6.5 just seems really low for me. So I'm leaning the other way. Now, in saying that, this, I'm still not. I don't. They could be vying for a potential playoff spot late in the year. I don't think this, but this isn't a team, in my opinion, that we're going and thinking this is a playoff team. They could surprise us. And with that being said, anything could happen. Like I said, but the expectations should be tempered just a little bit because they still are, in my opinion, rebooting a little bit. So at 6.5 seems low. I think it's very attainable. At the same time, they could surprise us and they could get us a couple extra W's out there. But so in saying that, what I'm really trying to say is let's be realistic with our expectations, but let's at the same time let's not keep them too low. So this, like I said, this could be a team that could surprise us and be fighting for that last wild card spot late in the year. But at the same time, this isn't a team that's going to the Super Bowl. I guarantee that, in my opinion. So we'll see where they go. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting the way the schedule's kind of, and then the other thing we can talk about, Jay, week 11 bye week. Once again, in my opinion, I hate that late. I mean,
it's late, but it's earlier
late.
than it's earlier than it was last season,
last year, I think, something like that. Yeah. I still don't know why, and maybe I'll write a letter to the commissioner. I still don't know why we don't go to a universal with all this real estate here. There should be week 8 and 9. That should be for half the league gets a bye in week 8. You still got half the league playing on week 8, and then in week 9, the other gets their bye. It's all evened out. You still got games all through the season. You're not missing a week where we're shutting everything down, but it's a universal where teams, that's all. Somebody had a bye in week 4. Who needs a bye in week 4, bro? At the same time, who needs a bye in who knows who has one in week 12 and 13 if they're still doing the same way? You don't need, in my opinion, it's too late. There should be some type of uniformity where the advantage is not so obvious. Like I said, for a team that's getting a bye in week 4 when you really don't need it, and then you got a 13-game stretch without a break, or on the flip side, where you're getting it in week 11, you put in 10 straight, now you only got the short sprint toward the end. So somehow, some way, it's got to be a way to, and then heaven forbid, they start talking about going to an 18-game schedule, throwing 2 byes in there. It's going to be total chaos, if you ask me. But, Cardinals, I guess if I had to choose, I'd rather have it too late than too early. So
because if you had it in week 4, that's if the season is a long road. No, I'm not trying to give the "Life is a Highway" song, but if the season is a long road and you have a pit stop, you have to get off and use the bathroom. Let's say at the 4th mile marker, and you got to go all the way to 18. You thinking, wait a minute, that's a long way to go.
Long way, bro.
Why couldn't I just? Why do we need to stop here? Why do we need to pause here? But yeah, that does seem like a long way.
It does.
Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. He's Ed Smith. I am Javon Adams. One thing is that at least to start off the season, though, with 3 of those first 4 being at home, again, as I mentioned earlier, it gives the opportunity to try to get some excitement. If you win if you're able to win, beat the Rams and beat Detroit, that would be if you come out of that first quarter of the season. But if we're breaking, as I know you often do, you break it down into quarters. So if those the first 4 weeks, I know that there are 17 weeks in the season, but if there are 17 games, but if the first four, I might have them coming out 1-3 out of that. But if we look at 5, 6, 7, and 8, it's interesting. That's where I think you might be able to get the Chargers. You're going to be going to Green Bay. I think going to Green Bay when it shouldn't be too cold, and going to San Francisco. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they come out of that. That second quarter looks to be, to me, just as challenging, because I think when they end up going to Miami, they're going. I think they may take the L there, but I guess that depends on if things implode in Miami, which I don't anticipate that they will.
Well, the other thing, Jay, you look at some of these quarterback matchups. Now
Yeah.
that's what it seems like it's all about. As you mentioned, in the second group of four, like we're going through quarters of a season. So 5, 6, 7, 8, you're going against Brock Purdy, who, he is Brock Purdy, but he does well within that system. Then you've got Jordan Love, Herbert, and Tua. Once again, you got a group of 4 teams that pretty much have their franchise quarterback in place.
Yeah.
We're not catching in that first 8 weeks of the season, we're not catching what I would call severe. We're not catching any real breaks in terms of the quarterbacks we're facing.
Maybe with Washington, because of Jaden Daniels, he's going to.
That's
aside
one.
from that, you are right. Yep.
I mean, we got 7 out of the first quarterbacks we're facing, and I now know we got Chicago in the next, after
the next grouping,
the next grouping there. But man, we're in, and even in that one, you're going rookie, but then you got quarterback in Rodgers, Seattle, and Minnesota. So I guess that's where you eventually catch your break. But
so here's the
thing.
Months of the season. Here's the thing about that, though. So yes, you in theory, because of rookie catching a break, but you're catching a rookie that's 9 weeks into the season. So depending on how short or long his learning curve is, if it's a longer learning curve to get adjusted to life in the NFL, then that could be a W. I had it down as wrote it down as a W for the Cardinals, and then also New York Jets. So depending on if New York, that's a tricky. I have it down as a loss just because of Aaron Rodgers, but we don't know how he's going to play. We don't know if by this time in the season, maybe there's been some losses that they've accumulated enough losses to really have the fan base on edge. So that could go either way, but I have it as a loss for the Cardinals. But that could be one of those, as you mentioned earlier, where you win 1 or 2 that you maybe shouldn't have or weren't expected to.
Yeah. It's definitely a difficult schedule to navigate, especially depends, and it's all dependent on the expectations of the franchise and the fans as well. Are we looking? Is this because a lot of people think, well, we have everything we're supposed to need, so this should be a playoff team. Nah, still, like I said, we're being picked right off the bat by all the prognosticators to be last in the division with the 6.5 wins. So the other thing is going to be, Jay, this is Kyler's 5th year. I think it is.
I think you're
somewhere
right.
In saying that, we got to start grading him on a different curve, if you ask me. As far as his leadership, he's definitely far away from being a rookie. And I think now is when you really have to start grading him on that curve of his production needs to start stepping up. As
6th
leadership.
Year. This is his 6th year.
Okay. Yeah. He lost half of it, most of it last year with the injury. But this is that time, bro, when you got to start grading him on a different, it's like he's had the test long enough. He's had the cheat sheet long enough. Now we can no longer, and you have to start factoring injury in here. We cannot, he has to get through this season, not injury free, but we can't have these things where once again he's finishing on an injury list or another, big chunks and stuff like that. We gave him the bag last year, or 2 years ago. He's now has to be graded on an entirely different scale because of factors we have to start throwing in there. He's now off that rookie deal. He's no longer looked at as a young quarterback. He should be one of those guys stepping into that next phase of his
Mhm.
career. We've seen some of these other. We've seen Burrow get to a Super Bowl, albeit he's been injured a few more times than they were probably went over there as well. But
Yeah.
everybody's getting into those second contracts now with his draft class and beyond. So we're gonna have to start looking at him through different lenses now, and his results, meaning can he uplift this team and organization even more than he has? Because that's why you give a dude that kind of guaranteed money, and that's why the quarterbacks make all that big change.
Yes,
So
indeed.
it is now, like I said, we got to start looking at him through a different light now. And I mean, would you say he's on or off schedule? Me personally,
Ooh.
I would say he's off schedule right
Yeah, I
now.
say he's off schedule. Yeah,
Yeah,
he could he could easily get back on schedule this season. And so
yeah.
last year it was trying to get last season it was trying to get things right, to trying to
Hmm.
work through, of course, coming back from injury. But I think he can get back on schedule this season,
Yeah.
this season coming up. Yeah.
And there are some factors, obviously, with the injuries and different things, and obviously lack of, lack of great talent on the roster. They are doing what I would consider a good job of, draft picks, and next year will be the test of more free agents, maybe,
Yeah.
because we really haven't done that part of it yet. But they've started to put some, talent on that offensive side of the ball as far as the offensive line. We've got Marvin Harrison Jr. We got a whole bunch of things working in our favor. Like I said, now you got to start applying that and making those next steps.
Yes, sir. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. He is Ed Smith. I am Javon Adams. So let's get to the last quarter of the season, and then we'll give our win-loss projections. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, I know it's just the math, how we got to make it math. But that is where I see them making a little more hay while the sun shines, because I have them coming out of from week 13 through the end of the season. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, one from week 13 all the way through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-1. And I think that's lofty, but but just looking at it again, because if a team has things wrapped up, then they're maybe less inclined to play their starters. We've seen that happen before. Or if a team is out of it, then they're less inclined to play their starters towards it. They're trying to have dress rehearsals, if you will, for next season, to see who can maybe come up and step up. So you might see that with Carolina Panthers, when they're taking them on in week 17 or 16, I should say. And then again with the San Francisco 49ers on the other way, because they may be getting ready for maybe a bye, or just know that they're locked into their playoff position if they indeed get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, and you're looking at the schedule that's in the back end there. You've got 2 out of 3 weeks where you're facing Seattle, not necessarily our toughest quarterback competition of
Right.
the year. You throw on New England in there, Carolina. So we're getting toward that part of the schedule where we should start eating a little more. We should
Yeah.
start, and like you said, it could be late in the year. Getting a couple of those W's to either put us back in a race or maybe keep us close. But all in all, yeah, that should be where we're racking up some W's at the end of the year. Is it enough to get us, in my opinion, and keep us in the playoff contention? I don't think so. I think there's too many L's at the front end of
Yeah.
this schedule that it's not going to be a disappointing season, because, as I mentioned, for me, it's not going to be about the actual win-loss record. It's going to be how we're going out there and competing and putting this record to what it's going to be more about what they look like than what some of the final scores are, for me, if that makes sense.
It does. And what's interesting, though, so let's just say that things fall out where it's tougher, where it's more challenging, and maybe the losses stack up in the front end versus the back end, right? Think about if that was flipped. Think about if it was you were playing the Panthers early and the Bears early, right? If it was flipped in terms of where they were in the schedule, because two things can happen. One, the fan base gets ignited. Two, players and no pun intended, if players begin to believe in what the philosophy is, what the culture is, what all the coaching is, and that's where you're able to, maybe you take a couple more wins because you're really believing in the early success that you've had, maybe because and it might be because you've taken on a couple of rookie quarterbacks in the beginning, or some of those maybe teams that are just really more deficient that are deficient in more areas than you are. So it's interesting how that can play out in the way the psyche is of a team.
Yeah, and I do think a portion of the getting off to a good start would be nice, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case.
Yeah,
How we finish this season could be
yeah,
the springboard to the next campaign,
yeah.
meaning 2025 and beyond is like our target date to really start looking a lot better. And the schedule might dictate that a little bit. Like I said, from the fact that, like I said, we're going to be playing some looks pretty stiff in the beginning and lightens up on us down the stretch, and that, like I said, could lead us into. Now, I'll ask you a quick question, Jay. When we're say the season goes the way they think it will, and we end up around that 6.5, win total.
Mm-hmm.
Murray doesn't look spectacular,
Mm.
but he looks okay. I mean, where are the Cardinals in terms of, do we have our franchise guy? I
Ooh,
mean, you know,
it could be tricky.
the other thing to remember, he's not a product of the current regime. They
Right.
didn't draft him. They are not the ones who gave him all the money. Is there a way that doubt could start to creep in? Meaning, is he our guy for the long term? You
Yeah,
know that.
that definitely would. If he performs poorly this season for whatever reason, then going into the next off season, that will be the case. But and I'm not the guy that watches that gets knee deep into or elbows deep or hip deep, whatever you want to analogy you want to use when it comes to college football. But from what I understand, the next year's college quarterbacks that could be eligible for the draft are not world beaters. And so
Yeah,
so then it's, what do you do? Do you trade him to bring somebody free agency? Do you, and then of course then you're taking on somebody's trash, so to speak, because they let somebody go. Somebody gets let go. There's a reason why you do it. Do you try to trade? Yeah, it's yeah, that'll open up a definite can of worms.
yeah. I'm really interested too, Jay, and we'll be looking for signs, and you and I will be talking about throughout the year. I really want to see a step up in Kyler's leadership ability.
Okay.
That's really going to tell me something. Once again, I'd love to see some W's mixed in there, but his leadership and the throwing up of the arms, the hands, and the slump shoulders and things that we have gotten here in the past, it's
Yeah.
time for some of that to go away. And I don't think that Gannon and Petzing, I'm pretty sure they're coaching him up in the room. That's not going to be something they're going to want to see either. So
Right.
I think this is just a huge year for Kyler and how he leads this organization, both on and off the field,
Right.
in and out of the huddle. I think that's going to be very important for this team and organization moving forward.
Yes, sir. We definitely keep an eye on that. So before we head out of here, what do you have for the win-loss totals? I'll go first. I got 7-10. Maybe because they've bitten me. I've been bitten by them so much the last couple
Yeah,
seasons that I'm being a little more pessimistic. Or maybe I'm just right on, especially when you're looking at the over-unders in terms of win-loss total. I guess I'm right there because I didn't even look at them. I was just thinking, and yeah. So I have 7-10. What do you have?
man, I'm leaning toward and I'm leaning toward an 8-9 season just because I
Ooh,
think they'll get one extra or so out of this, just the lore of Kyler Murray. He's
all
going to
right.
surprise us and have one of those crazy games mixed in there. I do think we can get to 8 now. What does that do for us in terms of playoff race and stuff like that? It'll keep the season interesting. I don't think we get into the playoffs, but it's a step in the right direction. Um, we can't. I'd say this much though: we can't have like a 5-win season here, Jay. It
Right.
can't be. It can't be a 5-win team. They need
Yeah.
They need a lot more than that. So if we're struggling and scuffing with this schedule down the stretch, and we end up 5-12, uh, you know, even 6-11 is unacceptable to me. I do
Yeah.
think this team should win at least 7, like you're mentioning.
Mr. Confident with Ed Smith. Typically, I'm the one that's more confident and being optimistic. I learned from having to pay off bets to you and your youngest son, so I'm not doing it. But on behalf of the one and only Ed Smith, I am Javon Adams. This is Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. Bleav in Cardinals. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend about what we have going on here. Yes, sir.
Before we get out, just like we did with the Easy Sports Talk Pod, I want to
Yes, sir.
congratulate Elijah for a great finish to his collegiate or his high school career, getting ready to go into college.
Yes,
He'll be
sir.
graduating when I get back in town next week. After last night, Quentin got to walk with his 8th grade class. I'm actually flying up today to see my oldest son graduate from medical school tomorrow.
Yes.
So congratulations to those 3 great young men in our lives, and all of the
Yes.
class of 2024 at all the different levels, man.
Yes, indeed. Yes, and I echo those sentiments. So yeah, you doing the world tour. You just make sure you take it easy with that back of yours. So make sure you tell a friend about what we have going on here. And as always, we are presented by Bet Online, and as we always like to say around this time, you can